Recording started. Great. Thank you everyone for joining today. We are here for the November Interreach webinar where this is our first session after the kickoff session last month. We are celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Integration and Implementation blog and repository, or I2 Insights. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. So if you didn't have a chance to join us last week, I just wanted to kind of go over again why and what we're celebrating here. And that's really just this incredible resource, the Integration and Implementation Insights blog and repository, or I2 Insights. If you haven't had a chance to explore it yet, it's at i2insights.org, and it's been lovingly and tirelessly hosted for the past decade by Gabrielle Bammer and Peter Dean at Australian National University. And for 10 years, I2 Insights has been a kind of global commons for all of us working in integration, implementation, and transdisciplinary problem solving. It's where ideas and tools get shared, where integrative skill sets are articulated and strengthened, and where people across disciplines come together around the hard work of tackling complex societal and environmental challenges. So in other words, it's been one of the places that's helping our whole community grow up, stretch out, and deepen its impact. And we're here to celebrate 10 years of it. So thanks for joining us. So if you can see a series preview on the screen now, hopefully I'm trying a new thing that Jillian introduced me to, which is my head is in the screen. And so hopefully my head isn't covering up too many of the session descriptions and titles. Okay, great. Thanks, Veronica. But we are here November 11th, Embodied in Arts-Based Practices with Jillian Student and Veronica Dittman Stanich. And you can see a list of the rest of the sessions that are coming up. And please stay tuned in your email inbox. We will be sending information about those sessions as we get closer to those dates. Okay. This is just an overarching agenda for our session today. We'll have, after this quick introduction, we are going to have 10-minute presentations by each of our panelists. So Veronica Student and Veronica Dittman Stanich. And I think they will go in the opposite order. So Veronica will go first and then Jillian. And then we'll have a 10 to 15-minute dialogue between the panelists, followed by a 15 to 20-minute discussion with our Interreach community here. So with that, I think that's my last slide. And then I want to just give you a quick bios for each of our speakers. So let me see. Sorry, I'm having I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. How do I do that? Stop the share. Okay, great. Okay, and I'm going to just go into our speaker bios. So Veronica's going to go first. Veronica Dittman Stanich is the Research Program Manager for the Alliance for the Arts in Research Universities, or A2RU, where she researches and disseminates best practices for arts integration in higher education, including interdisciplinary collaboration, impacts and tenure, and promotion practices. She's also the editor for Groundworks, which is A2RU's online platform for arts integrated research. Veronica holds a PhD in dance studies from The Ohio State University, researching audience responses to postmodern dance. From 1993 to 2004, she danced for a range of choreographers in New York, also co-producing the Industrial Valley Celebrity Hour, teaching ballet, and co-founding the Dance Insider there. And then after Veronica speaks, we'll have a chance to hear from Jillian. So Dr. Jillian Student is Dr. Jillian Student is a knowledge integrator and researcher on inter and transdisciplinary research and learning at the Vahinanen Institute. Is that right, Jillian? Yeah, Jillian, did I get that right?
You did a great job.
Thank you. So the Vahinen Institute for Environment and Climate Research, or WIMEC, and the Environmental Policy Group, Vahinen University and Research. Her research integrates different scientific disciplines, forms of knowledge, and creative approaches to explore human-environment interactions in the context of environmental change. So things like environmental degradation, climate change, and biodiversity loss. Gaming and simulations are some of the ways she co-creates an understanding of complex systems, develops experiences of potential trajectories, and unpacks future-looking decision-making, things like dependencies, different capacities, and uncertainties. So we're really excited to have Dr. Student and Dr. Dittman Stanich with us today. So thank you so much. Veronica, I will turn it over to you to start us off.
Hey, well, thank you so much, Kristine, and really thank you to all of the InterReach webinar organizers. I feel really honored to be included in this presentation today, and I'm so grateful that all of you came. I'm excited to have a conversation with you about the topics that Jillian and I are presenting. And I'm super excited to have my new super cool colleague, Jillian. I'm happy to have met her and talked to her. I've gotten to know her a little bit. So as Kristine mentioned, I work for A2RU, the Alliance for the Arts in Research Universities. And the way that that work intersects with what InterReach does is that some of what the work I do is to support interdisciplinary teams, especially those that include artists. So it made sense for me to join an informal Science of Team Science roundtable that formed here at the University of Michigan, where we are based. And so back in 2018, at that roundtable, I met Martina Durant. And Martina is a former Olympic athlete, entrepreneur. She has a master's in public health. And at U of M at the time, she was supporting RNA medical research. And so after one of these roundtable meetings, Martina approached me and was like, don't you think, I look at all these researchers I work with, they're so in their heads. Don't you think they could use some arts in their lives? And I was like, I don't know, this will be a conversation. So we continued that conversation. And we drew my old friend Margot Greenlee into the conversation. She is a choreographer and really an expert workshop facilitator. And the three of us ended up designing and delivering this workshop that is the topic of our I2 Insights blog post. So what I thought I would do today is sort of cover that workshop, what it's about, what it does, and then maybe put forth some prompts or some things I think about the workshop now that we've been doing it for a couple of years and it's out there. So the intended audience for this workshop is people for whom, specifically researchers for whom, but people for whom arts practice isn't part of their everyday lives. And we started with this idea of a stuck place, and we could never come up with anything that sounded prettier than stuck place. It's a cognitive conundrum. It's something you can't think your way around or through, and you just keep coming back at it, banging against it. And the premise of our workshop is that actions are tied to thoughts. So if you're always doing the same things, it's hard not to think the same things. And by actions and things, I mean just the stuff you do as part of your work. What do you do? Do you make observations and compare data and draw conclusions? If you do those things all the time and only those things, it's hard to think differently about that. So we proposed, let's come together and for just 2 hours, let's take on the practices of an artist. Let's make stuff together. So in the workshop, people bring in their stuck place and we write several metaphors for the stuck place. And then we build that metaphor. We make what's called a found object sculpture out of just everyday materials that we provide. And then we make observations on those found object sculptures from 3 different perspectives: from above, like a bird's eye view, from the side, and then from a long way off, from across the room. And all along, we're checking in with a partner and exchanging ideas with them. And we also have a recurring movement activity we do, and that movement activity evolves and has some metaphor built into it. So what that looks like specifically. So the last time I facilitated this workshop, and when we facilitate it, we challenge ourselves to, on the spot, do the workshop as our participants are as well. So I brought in a stuck place that has to do with the open access journal I run. And the metaphor I made was our journal. How did I say? Our journal is like a dinner party where we want everyone to come, but some people don't like what we're serving and don't care for the conversation. So I went over to the table and we have some sort of neutral building materials like plain blocks. And then we have some more sort of crafty things like different colored pipe cleaners and clay. And then we have some very evocative objects like a mirror or a little matchbox car or a little stuffed monkey. And I built my dinner party. I had people seated around the table and I tried to make them look different. Uh, and then came the moment when I had to look from another perspective. And so from the bird's eye view, I was looking, I didn't, I don't know ahead of time what is it that I'll see? And I said, well, people are sitting really far from the table. It's got to be hard to reach the table. And so trying to cross back and forth between the reality of my journal and this ever more detailed metaphor I'm building, what is that about? If it's hard to reach the table, what might that mean? So that's sort of how the workshop proceeds. And we give a survey after every workshop, and I have a pretty good response rate, like better than 3/4 of the people do my survey. And it appears, according to the survey responses, that the workshop works. It does the things we hoped it would do. People say, yes, I think about familiar things in unfamiliar ways. Yes, I made something, verbal or sculptural, that's useful for my thinking. And yes, I advanced my thinking. I came unstuck. So we also learned from the survey that different people cotton to those different modalities differently. Some people are relieved and excited at the prospect of getting to move in the midst of their day, of getting to do this movement activity. And some people find it awkward and uncomfortable and they can't wait till it's over and hope it doesn't happen again. So that's good information that, maybe if we had the same choices, I don't actually enjoy writing and making slides, but it's just a given. I have to do that every day. So it's nice to know that you have choices. We tell people you can keep the tools that work for you and don't keep the ones that don't. People are really grateful to have dedicated time on task to just focus and think about their thing for 2 hours. And they're grateful to talk to other people about it, to bounce ideas off other people and get perspectives. And those last 2 points, I think, are probably indicative about big issues in academia that no one has any time, least of all to connect to people who might be outside their sort of regular daily rounds. So that's the workshop. And with time passed, now I think 2 or 3 years since we wrote the I2 Insights blog post, I think about it a little differently. I mean, we built the workshop the way teachers or artists are like, it's not based on theory. It's based on what the three of us know works. And we sort of altered it and adapted it over time when we saw things weren't working to try and make it better. So that's my citation. That's how we built it. But since then, I've thought about possibly writing about it in a scholarly journal. And I think, how would I theorize that workshop now? Like, how does it do what it does? And I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on that. I've come up with a couple answers. One is, I think, that metaphor piece. Metaphors are just good tools for thinking with. They're good heuristics. I think building something, that fact that you make something that now sits outside me, it's not just in my head, it's a thing out there, and I can look at it and I can talk to other people about it, is a helpful bit. But I also think, because I come from the arts, that the critical art looking piece, while we're not taught to do it in school the way we're taught to read critically, for example, this business of looking at my sculpture and really attending to its details, just as you would sit in a theater and really attend, fully focused on what's happening here. What am I hearing? What am I seeing? What am I taking in with my senses? And making inferences that are grounded in that true sensory experience that we share is a really interesting skill. It's a really interesting thing to be able to do. So this thinking about how does the workshop do what it does is one thing I'd love to talk about with you all. And the other is, and Jillian and I previewed our conversation when we met earlier on this, is I'd like to give you 2 examples of feedback I've received on the workshop. One in person more than once from leadership in research areas who take the workshop and they say, this was great, but I really can't sponsor it. I can't recommend it for our senior researchers. It's just too touchy-feely. I don't think they would want to do this. And a piece of survey feedback I got that says, my partner and I agreed that we would expect ourselves to be eye rollers at the prospect of movement and pipe cleaner modeling, but instead we engaged wholeheartedly and enjoyed ourselves. So the idea of rolling your eyes or having something be too touchy-feely I think is real. The idea that this business of making something, of arts practices, is frivolous. It's not worth a professional's time. It's childish. Um, and to that, I say, no, there is a rigor to this. I defend the idea that these practices of being in a flow state while you're making something, but also making critical decisions along the way about how will, what material will I choose? How will I position it? What will I do? Does have a rigor. It just might not look like the rigor that you may be more familiar with. I made it in under 10 minutes, and I'm going to pass the mic over to my colleague, Jillian.
Oh, thank you so much, Veronica. That was a pleasure to listen to. I will just start sharing my screen, but that was wonderful. I share the once we think now it's October daily. And now you should all see my PowerPoint. Is that correct? Okay, great. Yes, so I'm going to take you to Wageningen in another context. And this is, again, for an audience that is maybe not as used to using arts-based practices in their daily, but that they may. In the blog post, I borrowed the title for this presentation from the blog post of Not Just in Our Heads, Embodied and Creative Practices for Creating Connection, because one of my roles, I was looking at putting together a conference for the first time and bringing people together, but really wanted a different type of conference in that people would because it was new to ensure different types of engagement was possible in such a short time, because we wanted to have also interactive sessions, or for people to be involved in a kind of hackathon of looking at inter and transdisciplinary practices. But to get there, we needed to help bring them to this space instead of having presentations and just question and answers, because we expected more things from this engagement. And before I continue, I just would like to acknowledge the co-author and collaborator, Corinna Laman, who also made this event possible. And what you also heard from Veronica, she was working with a really nice team to help take people out of their comfort zone. And it was really important to work with someone who was also really enthusiastic and could bring different things to the table. So this conference was from this. I work on behalf of WEMEC at this transdisciplinary hub called TREAD, and we focus on transdisciplinary research, education, and dialogue. And the focus of this event was really to inspire, interact, and integrate. And so it was really a puzzle of like, how are we going to get this to happen? And I really wanted to find ways of embodying this idea of co-creation, because that was the theme of the conference. So what we did is we started with a dance. And before we even introduced ourselves in the conference, we had we got up and first individually in a bit in this state of awkwardness, but we did 3 dance moves that embodied inspire, interact, and integrate in front of the audience. And I'll just show you, I didn't want to show you the video necessarily, but just showing you this feeling of being in front of a bunch of people. And this was at the end when people were dancing with us, because we brought this through the whole conference event. But yeah, we started with just the 2 of us dancing for these steps, and then we introduced and kicked off the conference. And so I think that this was really important to embody this feeling of being alone or unsure. I feel comfortable dancing, but not necessarily for other people in an academic setting. Also, when you have, as you can see from this picture, people looking towards you and you are alone in that act, you're very exposed. So I didn't, I think what was really important to show our vulnerability and not to expect more from others than what we were also willing to give ourselves. And if I go to, oh, yeah, so this is so there was plenty of dancing during this conference, and I think the important thing was to show vulnerability, also to show the power of togetherness. And what was also before we had introduced the conference or kicked it off, people were dancing together. So they were dancing at different other moments of this conference, but we had danced together before we had talked together, and it was really powerful to see people moving together and trying these different out. The second move with interact is also an interactive movement that you engage in. So you do that with other people. So that was one way that we in this event tried to embody the message of co-creation and the vulnerability people experience when engaging with new people and new ideas. The other thing that we used was metaphors. And as you heard already from metaphors can be really helpful to make things more tangible for people. So I'm just going to show you this was one of the slides from the event that we had up during this plenary. And we asked as an icebreaker for people to give a metaphor to describe your experience in transdisciplinary collaborations. And then we did an oil spill technique so that they could talk to each other and get some ideas of what were the different experiences people had using with transdisciplinary collaboration. And a couple, for example, of things that came out was someone sees themselves as a middle child in the family, that you have to respect the family, but you're not really seen, or that you are a choreographer of the dance and trying to understand these movements, probably also influence. So there was different kinds of things that came out of that discussion. And I guess also at the beginning you saw this was rich picture summary of the event, and what I am doing now is kind of zooming into a few of the different things that we did. And one of the reasons we did the metaphors was in addition to making it more tangible, but to create some common ground, to give something a sense of a feeling of something that they could share together. And so this was also that we would do these different types of things plenary to kind of create this feeling of community in a plenary setting, because often or sometimes in plenary settings it's really hard to reach different people to instill that connection. We also used drawing. We had people also draw something about their collaboration, but again we also had this rich picture, which was one of the ways that we engaged with trying to make unique summaries of the day. So these two artists were drawing throughout the different throughout the second day of the conference, different moments, and helping illustrate and give attention to. And it was really nice to hear some of the things that they picked up on that you would not necessarily remember if you just were depending on spoken word. And they also shared at the end of the day, so you can see that it was so much developed how they interpreted the different messages that were shared in conversations. And I think this was important to activate other senses, so to make us aware of different things more than just what we were listening to, but what we were seeing, what were some key even metaphors that came out. Another thing we did was writing. Now, writing is something that we are familiar with, but we did it in a different way. So we co-created haikus. We had people come up with some different words that were important for them, and then they had to share these words with each other and then exchange at least, or you take from someone else at least one word and incorporate it into their haiku. And I think what was really, this is just one example, and this is also in the blog. Listening and trust, we co-create together, respect the process. And what was what is really powerful, I find, with haikus is how it makes us capture a message in fewer words, and also how quickly these things can be created. But also, I think about this experiencing alternatives. We're very familiar with writing, but writing in different forms. I don't. There's not many of us maybe that feel as comfortable writing in a poetic form, and it's really when I did this activity the first time, I thought it was impossible to create a poem in 20 minutes, and that would be that would serve as an idea for a strategy. But it was really a powerful process to see what you could actually come up with in a short time using a tool that but in a very different way. The theme of the conference was co-create, and that was we really tried to co-create also these aforementioned examples that I gave, but we also co-created further the dance. So we had 3 steps related to the inspire, interact, and integrate, but we added 2 new steps based on that we made together based on questions that we posed to the audience. So we did a woo clap to get words that were related to collaboration, and one of the big ones that came up was trust. So then we together not only came up with a word, but also the movement that would embody trust. And then there was a 5th one, and I was looking back, and I can't hear back in the recording what the exact meaning of that word was, but I believe it had to do with the connection. So we went through this process of not just dancing, but also co-creating the dance so that they had ownership in this experience. And I think the important thing there was that we were really trying to embody in our conference and how we were engaging, setting the stage for different types of thinking, collaboration, and connecting, that we were also doing it in the way we set up the plenary. So it was it was really a positive vibe. There were definitely people that felt less comfort in different things. My director was one of the people that said, "Oh, dancing, I didn't expect that to be, but also when are we going to be dancing again?" So there was this tension of, okay, that's not what I would expect, but also when can we do it again? So this is to end a bit how we took on this idea of we want to inspire, interact, and integrate, and how can we embody this process in a creative way so that we can co-create something special together. And with that, I'd just like to say congratulations also on the 10th anniversary. So I will end there, and looking forward to our discussion, Veronica.
Thank you to both Dr. Stanich and Dr. Student for those really wonderful remarks. I'd love to open it up to you guys to continue the conversation, and then we will open it up to the community in just about 10 minutes from now.
Well, Jillian, I'll get us started. Listening to you now, give it formally. We had sort of talked informally before. I would love to hear. It sounds like this group was, the purpose of the group, the reason they came to this conference has to do with creativity, but were there challenges? Was there resistance from anybody to this? And how did you handle them? Or was there any expectation setting you felt like you had to do ahead of time because it is so unconventional?
Well, I think that the people were wanting, I think that people were attracted with the idea that it was a conference on inter and transdisciplinarity. So they were some people were more comfortable with the idea of creative forms, but not necessarily everyone was prepared for that. So I think what was important was, again, that first step of recognizing that vulnerability and putting myself in a vulnerable place what was important, because and also showing that it was with someone. I think the ability to connect with someone, like they were not as exposed as myself and Corinna, but so they could engage with it with us. But we also, I think we really tried to set the kind of a space where they could be brave and feel comfortable. So there was a lot of thinking about how we can do that, because they weren't expecting those kind of things. They may have been familiar with the Center of Unusual Collaborations, where they do take a bunch of unique approaches, but many people, it was the first exposure. So sorry but so some people expected it, but many did not. And I think this trying to create this brave space, but maybe for you in the same vein, because um, is it now by word of mouth that people already kind of anticipate that they have to use pipe cleaners and play with different things, or do you find that a lot of people come expecting a different type of workshop to get unstuck and then are encountering something else?
Well, I wouldn't say we're such like a big famous thing that there's any word of mouth on our workshop, but that's a nice thought. We do have a pre-email we send out that is pretty brief, but just says, this will be immersive. You will be writing and making things and moving. Don't plan on multitasking while you're in the workshop, which sets some things. And actually, I learned this from Margot, who was the first of us to facilitate it. I facilitate it most often now, but she does the smartest thing when we first moved together. She says, this is kind of unusual. It's probably not the way you usually start your things. And we stand in a circle and she says, do I have any runners or joggers here? Dog walkers? How about yoga or Pilates? Gym rats? And she just goes through a bunch of things. And so pretty soon everybody has some movement experience. And she says, you are all have all the movement chops you need to do what we're about to do. So there's nothing virtuosic here. I'm not going to be looking at you and grading you on how you move, which I think really sets people at ease. And then we also added an extra sentence we say, which is, it's also not about the sense of sight. I'm not looking at you and assessing how you're doing. It's about the sense of sensation. This is for you to feel something you might not normally feel in your everyday. So I think Margot's super smart to set that up before we start moving, to give people a little something to go on if they really don't do that ever often.
Mhm. Yeah, okay. And do you find, because you one of your questions that you wanted to talk about was this that discomfort, or that some people might perceive it as childish. What are some ways that are there things that you have thought of to make it that I don't know, that to introduce them to being open to using pipe cleaners and things? Is there a step in between them, the doing and the introduction, or how does that work?
Well, I talk for about 5 minutes at the beginning, sort of framing it, and I usually know who's there and sort of what their background is and what they do. So I can say we're just going to try these practices, and you could sort of, I haven't given it recently, so it's not on the tip of my tongue, but sort of subtly reminding them that you came to this workshop to try something different. So this is going to feel different from what you usually do. And also because more and more recently, I've given the workshop in med school settings. I have this great fMRI study I like to refer to, and then people are like, oh, she knows what fMRI is. And I say, I know it's a flawed methodology. And so then they even respect me more because I can talk about fMRI. But there's this great study about the prefrontal part being activated and the side parts being suppressed when, I can say this much better when I've rehearsed and I'm all set, but when jazz musicians are improvising. And so I think a lot of people can respect that idea that sometimes you have to shut down the part of you that judges and says, what should we be doing now? And just enter that state of, I'm just doing it. So the part of you that edits and assesses what you're doing while you're doing it, just let's calm that down for a little bit. And I promise we'll get to use it later. You'll be very critical and assess what you've made and think about it. But for now, just try something different. So I don't know if that answers
Yeah.
what you.
And is there a moment that you find during your workshop that you see them going from that one zone of comfort to that new space that you're inviting them to explore of outside of their head?
Um, Well, people are very intense when they have to write their metaphors. They're all they're looking down at their paper and they're looking up and they're doing this. But when they all gather around this table of stuff, I feel like everybody locks in. Like they're like, oh, I want those, whatever they are, those blocks or whatever. What do you see in terms of the difference between, you mentioned that writing is more familiar. We write all the time. So that's not a very far step away. Can you see different people's comfort levels as they approach these things that are maybe less familiar than writing?
Uh, yes, there's definitely um, different different comfort levels. I think one of the things that helps is that showing that it is possible, maybe that helps, that it can be different, and also that even because we set the stage by dancing first and then introducing, that already show that it could be different. So then when we did different activities that were unusual, that maybe made it more a less big step to take, even though it was more strange than not than writing. I think even the writing, though, a lot of people, when we say, okay, you're gonna make a haiku in a plenary, that sounds very far, but when you take them through the steps, then they realize, oh, okay, well, we've done this. Oh, now we've just done this. Oh, and I think that maybe on the one hand, it's nice to show people that, hey, there's this thing that we're going to do that's very different from what you do. And it feels maybe impossible at the moment. But then when you have a bit of the facilitation of those moments, people get excited about this potential of something that they're trying and that they are accomplishing in a space, in a time setting, and in a way that they didn't think that was there. And then that, I think, along with your this thinking of that stuck and unstuck, because there are so many more possibilities, but sometimes we get stuck in our loops, and it's really hard to do that zooming out that you talked about, these three different perspectives, because I think that we often are maybe seeing it so closely like this, and what you do with your workshop of like, okay, now I'm seeing it closely from the side. Oh, now I'm above it. What does it look like? What does that mean? I think those are really yeah, powerful to help the steps. Sorry, I added more things I may have answered, but I think that kind of putting some things that are kind of new and different is one thing, but then and then this kind of helping give some steps along the way, and that, so that people can see that they're accomplishing something that they thought was initially impossible.
Yeah, that's super smart. Sort of like here, you've done this, and look, now this seems to naturally come from this because look what you've already done. So smart design, very cool. Kristine, do we have time to keep talking?
Yeah, I think we have another minute or two if you guys are want to continue the conversation just a little bit more.
Sure. Well, I will just, oh, go ahead, Jillian.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead first, and then I'll ask
I
my.
was just going to open up metaphor because it's something that where our two experiences intersect. Yeah, talk about metaphor.
Yeah, no, I find metaphors really useful, and I haven't just used it in the conference setting, but in other research and workshop settings. And I find that it's just when you were talking about that table for your situation, and I was also imagining other settings where I've been also using the table, or what do you serve on this table in terms of topics, for example, and that like a table metaphor can be really useful in thinking about a bunch of different things. So I find that metaphors really help. Yeah, they can help make these vague issues more tangible, but also they can inspire different ideas or connections that you don't initially think of. Because when you said the table, we also think about how important connection is, and how do you bring people to the table, and then what invites people to the table. What would be that thing, that meal that people would want to come to, that you don't have to send invitations months in advance, but that you could also just week or an hour before and they want to be at your dinner table. So I think that metaphors are really useful in making a bunch of ideas, and they also can be good to challenge too, because we get used to certain types of metaphors, and we assume that they have the same meaning for other people. So I think but for you, for metaphors, have you encountered metaphors that are particularly useful or maybe not useful in helping people get outside of their heads? Because there's some that we use all the time.
Metaphors for getting outside your head, that aspect of it.
Yeah, because I find that there's some metaphors that we feel very that we assume that everyone knows, like the milestones, or one of them at an event recently, we asked about how people see collaboration through the metaphor of lighthouses. And it was interesting because some people said, oh, that's the point in which I want to go to. And other people said, oh, it's not a departure point, it's like a beginning idea. But this idea of lighthouse is something that resonates with a lot of people, but there can be these underlying assumptions of how you see a lighthouse I'm just wondering, in these STEM activities with STEM researchers, do you find that there's maybe some metaphors that are very commonly used and then maybe assumed to be shared among people that have very different
We don't ever really get there, I guess, because people are dealing with such personal or individualized things that their metaphors are just wholly unique. It's not about something that other people relate to off the bat. So we're not falling back on the sort of thing you're talking about, where there's a shared sort of implicit, we all know what this means when we say it's a milestone, or so
yeah.
it doesn't come up in that way.
Okay.
But I have sometimes said the workshop is like going on vacation. Like you go somewhere different and you see different things and you eat different foods than you normally would, and you wake up at a different time and you have different sensory experiences. And when you come home, like just for a day, things look different. So
Mhm.
vacation is the best I can come up with. Take a vacation.
That sounds like a very great place to go. And is there something that has been? I see that there's one question
Yeah,
about
I
this.
see there's a couple questions in the chat. Do we want to maybe take this one from Kenan, which is for Veronica and Jillian? Have you intersected with clean language use of metaphors? And this is coming from Caitlin Walker's book based on David Grove's creation of clean language.
I have not. So that's the short answer, but it's I've written it down because I also work with someone who's a metaphor expert. So I'm curious what his encounters are with that. But thank you for sharing.
Same. I'm not familiar, but I'm writing down the details. Thank you.
Veronica, I see your hand is raised. Do you have another question, or did you want to build off of this one?
Is it for me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah, like if the floor is already open to ask question also directly.
Yeah, I just wanted to actually maybe ask Kenan if she had wanted to share a little bit more about her question.
No, just that Caitlin Walker has a couple of nice books, but clean language might be an unfortunate term. I've had some people push back on it, but it is to do workshops where people can get to a shared understanding and empathy. And in fact, since I'm already open mic here, there are so many overlaps. Oh my gosh, like social presencing theater from the U Lab does a stuck exercise, and it comes from the world of dance with Ariana Hayashi's background in dance. And gosh, they're like 3D mapping. We just did one recently with the people that were involved in NAC Feeds program, where it's also one of the tools that's used there. So there are, I guess what I'll leave is a hanging question for the community, which is based on my love of the work I do, but frustration, and a big thanks. I'll be brief, but a big thanks to Jillian and Veronica for embodying creating these things through your own experience and your own specialties, and Veronica, we've spoken in the past, that these tools are ones that I'm really, really interested in helping transform science using. And so my question for everyone is, how might Reimagine Science help that? But how might that, what can be done so that that happens, so that it moves more quickly? Because I think it's important to do so. But I don't want to unhinge the rest of the questions, so it can be a hanging question. Thank you, Veronica. Thank you, Jillian. I'm done.
Thanks, Kenan. Veronica, not our speaker, Veronica, the other Veronica. Did you have a question that you wanted to pose here?
Yes, I have a question. It's great, a bit confusing. Veronica, but thank you. I'm so excited to join this and to find about Interreach, or yeah, just recently, and to join the first webinar on embodied practices, because I have a question which recently came on my mind. In my job, I do co-creation research. We try to involve stakeholders to a transformation process, which is about technology, but ultimately about the whole society. But I also have a background in somatic education, and I would really like to bring this approach to my current job, which is normal environmental research job, but we try to apply co-creation practices. And I wonder, I know there are like different co-creation methods, artistic-based methods, maybe something with the movement. And today I learned also about the dance. It's wonderful to use this. Yeah, if there are, and where I could find, how familiar are you with incorporating embodied methods or anything that has to do with body sensation movement for transdisciplinary research? I mean, for that conference, it's amazing, but specifically in this field of transdisciplinary research, or even more specifically, environmental research.
There are, Veronica, I'm not sure if you want to start this, but there are some different resources. I will maybe put one in the chat already. I just have to double check the name, and it's a really lovely resource on workshops and how you can create it, and also in consideration with what your goal is, which types of practices and which can help you. So I've used that as a resource. I'm just double checking the name, and then I'll put it in a chat, and it's a free resource. There's also, I have found other different things in the Insights blog. I've also seen to Insights blog, I also have seen different ways of approaching things, and you could imagine giving it a different type of spin on how to embody it. So there are some nice blog posts in the repository. There's also there are definitely more resources that are not coming to mind, but I think that even the different toolboxes that the universities are having, they have different levels of embodied practices. But I will find that one resource and put it in. But yeah, there are things out there, and they are sometimes hard to find. But yeah, that's my start. But maybe Veronica, you have something that you could add to that.
I don't. I'm stuck on trying to remember, what was I just reading after I read your post, Jillian? I found all these other things and went down an internet rabbit hole, and I can't remember, but I can throw out the name Liz Lerman as someone who's done a lot of work with bringing movement to all sorts of settings where you wouldn't expect to find it, and she's done it with a great deal of success. So Liz Lerman, I guess I'll type it.
Thanks for this really great discussion. And are there any other questions? I know we have just a few minutes left, so I wanted to just give you all a chance to throw out any additional questions before we move on to the next parts of our days. Okay. Amalia, it looked like you were going to say something.
I do have a question. Veronica, I'm wondering if you have ever given this workshop to research teams.
I would love to, but I have not. I've done it in, no, like a team, like an interdisciplinary research team, no.
Okay. So, I mean, that actually brings up another quick question that I have is how do you get the word out about your workshop? How do you drum up interest?
I wish I knew the great answer to that. That would be really successful and effective. Because I work for A2RU, which is a network of colleges and universities, institutions of higher ed that are committed to integrating the arts. We have partners who keep track of what we do, and we, periodically put it before them. And sometimes it catches someone's eye who's like, "Oh, that's exactly what we need." It lands on the office of someone's desk in the office of research or something. But I don't have like a good marketing strategy, so I'll take suggestions.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you so much to Dr. Stanich and student for joining us today and sharing more about their recent blog posts for I2 Insights. And thank you to everyone who joined the call and participated in the discussion. We look forward to seeing you all next month. Have a nice day.
Thank you so much.